I took it off.
Jenny
That was
turned
me.
it off.
That was
Okay.
the Wednesday.
Okay.
Rolling.
Well, certainly people remember the opening sequences of the
Right.
late night with Letterman. Could you talk about them? Because you were involved in so many
Yeah,
of them.
well, I worked with a lot of people on it, but I take credit for the changes. When I came to the show, there was an NBC digital guy did one, and it was good. It was like New York City going from under the, no, actually the first one was just a piece of music with a couple of cards. And then when we started towards the middle of the morning show, we had one done by the NBC department, and then when we started the night show, the Tonight Show, the late night show, I was allowed to do one temporary because they couldn't pick one. Dave couldn't pick one he liked, and so I did one on my own, waiting for Dave to make up his mind. But it just was accepted because Dave never got around to changing his mind about it. So we did that, and then when we went out to California, we didn't have an opening, so I stayed behind. I didn't stay behind. I went off for an afternoon and worked with guys, and we came up with an opening for Hollywood, which is one I like. There's a fellow named Chase, Charlie Chase, and he's sitting and this is one little clip, and he's sitting in a shoe shine stand, and there's a man next to him, and the man's looking at him, and Charlie Chase's hat is on fire, but he doesn't know it. And so we had a bunch of little clips like that of old Hollywood, and that was so. Well, each time we started a new series, or I was able to do the put it together. We have one with starting as a satellite going around the Earth and ending up in New York City. So I enjoyed doing it, and that's really not a very interesting approach.
And how about also your relationship with Paul Schaefer, too, who was such an important part of the show.
Yeah, Paul and I liked each other, but we weren't real friends. I mean, I think it all started badly because we were having early meetings when we would call back to do the late night show, and Paul was in the room, and I knew Paul from Saturday Night Live, where he did music for them, and he did acts for them, and I thought he was coming on to be a music consultant. I didn't know that Dave had already talked him into doing a show, so I was there recommending other bands. And one was a friend of mine. The guy plays great what do you call it? A mouth organ player. Anyway,
Harmonica?
huh?
Yeah.
Who was most famous one. He's now
Yeah.
gone. Yeah, and I thought he'd be great for the show. And then Dave says, "No, we signed Paul already, Hal." And I felt bad. I felt terrible, and Paul was kind of snickering. Yeah, but we got along. I mean, Paul. It's like, see, here's a story with musicians. Musicians are a world of their own. They don't really. They're like from Mars. They when they're together, all they talk about is music. When they're not together, all they talk about is music. And so that I don't think I've ever had a conversation with Paul. I don't think I have a real conversation with any musician. So that's where we stand.
In terms of Dave at the end, he was temperamental. You could feel it on the air.
Oh yeah.
Could you just talk about the different, temperaments of Dave, when he was doing the show?
Yeah, well, I think with Dave, I mean, he was honest about the fact that doing a show every night is really tough. I mean, you don't have to be, it's not that you have to be good every, 1 or 2 nights a week. Yeah. For Dave, you had to be good every night. And every night you had to be better than you were the night before. So he had that burden. A lot of people don't have that. And what happens is that they're canceled. I think it takes a lot of hard work, endurance. I mean, it's not easy work. You got all those people watching you, waiting for you to be funny. I mean, think of that in your own life. How would that be? It's not easy.
So could you talk about, the late night show coming to the end and how that happened?
Yeah, well, we all expected to be doing the Tonight Show. Dave thought so, everybody working on the show, and then
Did you like the idea of going back and doing the Tonight Show yourself?
I was at a point where I wasn't sure how many more years I wanted to be doing that. I said to my friends, I said, I don't want to die in the basement of the Ed Sullivan Theater. That was later on.
Right.
And
But, so
that was later on, yeah.
You're at NBC and you expect the Tonight Show, so.
And then we're getting these reports that they're talking about Leno, like continuing Leno. And so there was a battle between the West Coast and the East Coast. Although I think a lot of people on the East Coast were kind of undermining our efforts, or Dave's efforts. And it came about, it got stronger and stronger, the reports that the show's going to go to Leno, and we would stay in our spot and wait. And Dave said he's waited his turn. He's been there for I don't know how many years, a long time, 12 years, and so I think there was a point where I got an Emmy, and backstage, when you get an Emmy, you go back and then you're confronted by reporters, and all they wanted to ask about was, how does Dave feel about losing the Tonight Show? And right away, all along, Dave and people on the show, don't answer questions like that. Just don't show your feelings, and that'll help you get the show. And when they asked me that, I said, well, he's pissed. We're all pissed. And that got in the papers. Dave's pissed about losing the Tonight Show. And then it was confirmed that Leno's going to get it, and also announced at the same time that Dave's made a deal with CBS to take the show over to CBS.
Now, did Dave always confide in you that he wanted to do Tonight Show? Was that something you knew, that his dream in the mid-'80s?
He didn't talk about it, but we just knew it. I mean, it was just, Carson was his rabbi, as we say, and he got him his show in the morning. I mean, it was his appearances on the Tonight Show that started Dave, and they were good friends, as friendly as Johnny got. And so I think he was surprised that it turned out that Leno, who wasn't, he was good. Actually, the thing about Leno, he was the best stand-up comic we ever had on our show. And he and Dave were good friends. And I think he felt bad about taking the show away from Dave, but we expected, and we didn't think we were going to go out to California. We figured that the show would come back just as now. It's back in Studio 6B where it originated. So that I felt bad for Dave. I was wondering how many more years I'm going to be doing this stuff.
Now, when did you first hear about the negotiation with CBS and doing a late show there?
Well, there were rumors, but it got serious when I heard that Dave wants you and the head writer to go with him over to CBS, and I didn't know what for. So, and it's people don't know this, but if you go down far enough in the RCA building, you're going to end up in a way to get to the CBS building underground. So we went down in an elevator, down, and we got into a big limousine. I said, where are we going, Dave? And he said, we're going to CBS. Well, don't we have to go outside? No. And we drove through the bowels of the two buildings, and we end up in the CBS building, get out and go up in an elevator, and there's a room full of reporters. And he said, and so Dave says, we're going to make a report here. And so that's when Dave announced that, and whoever was with him announced that we're going to do the show at CBS.
Now, could you talk about the planning of doing that show? Were you involved in rethinking the set?
Yeah, well, then the problem was all right, we're going to do the show at CBS. Where are we going to do it? And my vote was we do it in a theater. The executive producers wanted to do it at CBS. First of all, it was Bob and Peter LaSalle. Peter LaSalle lives on the West Coast, and Bob always wanted to go to West Coast. And they were talking up the idea of going to, first of all, the CBS new buildings in Hollywood. And Dave asked me and Bob to go out and take a look at them and see what we thought. And Bob came back and said, "Oh, they're great. It's going to be perfect for you." And he asked me what I thought. I said, "It'll be like doing a show at a space agency." It was this great big shiny buildings. I said, "Dave, the good news is like 40 acres of cars." Yeah. And so he says, "All right." So I dissuaded him from that. And then we started looking in New York, because I didn't want to move to the West Coast, and neither did most of the people on the show, and neither did Dave. I said, people aren't funny on the West Coast, and they are funny in New York. And so we started looking for a theater, and we looked at the old Hudson Theater, where the first Tonight Show was started.
Yes.
We went to different theaters, and none of them had the seating or it didn't appeal. And then we decided to go to the broadcast center, CBS Broadcast Center, and the one big studio there was a couple soap operas, and they wouldn't give up, and they recommended one of the studios there, and without my knowing it, Dave signed on. He just said, "Okay, let's do it here," and then the set director and myself went over and looked at it, started measuring it, and they said, "It's no bigger than the studio you're in now." We went back to Dave, and I said, the Ed Sullivan Theater was great for Ed Sullivan and all those people. Why don't we give it a try? So we went over, and Dave almost walked out with even saying, he says, "What a rat-infested, slimy place. How do you expect us to do a show here?" I said, "If all the slime is removed, it's a great, great venue." And
how much had the theater changed since you did the Gary Moore show there? What did the theater look like at this point?
Well, it was slimy and rat-infested. It was. First of all, the control room was put in the back of the audience, so it took up like 1/4 of the seats. And then off that was a couple ramps up to staging, extending the stage out for commercials. And the seating would be maybe 1/3 or 1/4 the amount that were originally intended. And the thing about the Ed Sullivan Theater is it wasn't all Ed Sullivan, it was the Oscar Hammerstein Theater back in the 20s, and it was built with the largest proscenium in New York, and it was made for musicals. Unfortunately, the Depression came along, and no one was producing big musicals, and it became a nightclub for a while, and then CBS took it over and did things like Gary Moore, and I remember going there for the Ed Sullivan Show with Gary Moore. It was pretty damn good, but now it had fallen into this disrepair, and I still wanted. I thought, gee, this would be a good deal for CBS, and the president. I have his name written down here someplace. The president of CBS at the time. You would know his name. He was with us, and he showed us the studios at the broadcast center, and then he came with us to look at the Ed Sullivan Theater again. And while Dave and the two producers were just shaking their heads, it'll come to me later, but he said, "Hal, I want to talk to you." So we walked out, and he said, "What do you think about this place? Do you think he could turn this?" And I said, "Just a minute, let's walk." And then we walked out through the theater onto Broadway. And I said, "Here's the answer. You're on Broadway. You got activity here. You clean up this place, and it's a great theater. What more do you want? And it's for sale." And CBS just, I think, leased it. And also there was a office building attached to it that went with the theater, where to me, it couldn't be better. But I still had a lot of resistance. And then one day, Dave said to me, he said, "All right, we clean it up." He said, "Do you think it'll look like 11:30? And we were on at 12:30. Would it look like 11:30? And I said, "No, it'll look like 8 o'clock. And that's what happened. We were #1 for the first 3 years we were there. And everybody agree that it was a great venue for a talk show.
Could you talk about the transition? You did some rehearsal shows, did you not? Getting ready for that new move to 11:30.
I think we did one or two, and I think maybe we even used one. But that whole summer where the theater was being restored, I was out with the crew and Dave. We weren't around for the interviews, and one of the people involved, and you probably know this man. He's written a couple books about the transition, and he interviewed Morty and Peter that summer about the show, and never talked to Dave or any of the writers or anybody else. Right. So there's false impression that that it was a bad start, but it was saved. But we spent the whole summer doing remotes for the show.
What sort of remotes did you do? Do you remember any of those remotes?
Well, we always ended up going to Nutley, New Jersey. We had the man shave his beard, and
right.
We went to a funeral parlor. We did a lot of really odd things.
Now, were you conscious of the fact that you won't be on at 12:30, 11:30? It's a different time slot, a different audience, different expectations.
As I said, when I said 8 o'clock, I meant it was going to be like a show that you would see in prime time. I thought I thought of it as a prime time show, not a late night show. And I think the audience did too. I mean, we had great guests. We had Paul Newman in the audience. Yeah. Dave having a chat with him, and he dismisses him by saying, "Okay, Mr. Einstein, do your show." Yeah, we had great moments there.
Did Dave make adjustments too? Did he change his persona a bit?
Yes, he didn't wear jackets anymore, or suits. Right. He wore double-breasted suits. He wore great shoes. We had a shiny red floor. The whole place looked great, and he lived up to it. He looked great. He came out, looked not elegant, but well dressed, but the comedy didn't change that much. It was still kind of a lot of nonsense. And
right. You had pretty much the same staff had come over, did it?
Oh yeah, everybody. We all, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you were also supervising producer. Could you talk about that role for the show?
Yeah, that was like a little personal thing when Peter and Bob, when Dave said, "All right, let's do the Ed Sullivan Theater," I had the office next to Bob, and then Bob says, "Oh, by the way, Hal, we're going to use the Ed Sullivan Theater," as if I had nothing to do with it. So I said, "Just a minute, Bob. When you go back to talk to Dave and Peter, tell them I'm not going to the Ed Sullivan Theater unless I'm a producer." And that was it. I was a producer that day.
So it's interesting. And in the role in television, how would you describe the role of the director versus the producer?
You know what the big deal is? That when they give an Emmy Award, you get an Emmy Award because you're a producer. That's it. My role stayed the same. I didn't go to meetings. It's just you get a name. I mean, right. After all, everybody becomes a producer.
Right. So, could you recall that very first episode? Was there an excitement when you went back?
Well, we used.
And you had Bill Murray, of course. Huh? And Bill Murray
was there, doing his bit. But the opening was the little chubby guy.
Calvin DeForest.
Calvin DeForest.
He couldn't be Larry Bud Millman, could he?
That's right. He had to change his name, and I thought Calvin DeForest was a much funnier name. His uncle was the guy who invented FM radio. Yeah.
Right.
He came from a distinguished background, and he opened with the CBSI. The eye opened up, and there was Larry Bud, and we started the show. But it was pretty much the show we did at 6A.
Right.
Yeah.
But what were some of the differences between the Late Show and Late Night? Were there any major differences in your mind?
I think Dave's dressed the way he dressed. I think the band numbers were bigger and more, elaborate. I can't think. I think.
Did you know immediately? You talked about the Broadway street, that there were different.
Oh, that's. I'm sorry. I missed the whole point of the show.
Yes, right.
Was that Dave could go out, and there was a shop at the end of the street where these two fascinating guys from overseas
Yeah.
became part of the show.
Right.
At one point, you have it written down. What's their names?
No,
Huh?
Rupert. No.
Yeah, Rupert. No,
Mujabar,
Rupert has
Mujabar and
Yeah.
Sergil.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
And Rupert G was the deli, of course.
Yeah, Rupert. I remember going when we just decided to do the theater. I went into Rupert's and I bought a coffee, and he said, "What's going on?" Because and I said, "What's going on is your life is being changed," and he became part of the show. Yeah.
Did you
important
work
one.
with him at all,
Huh?
or did he just have a presence? Did you work with him?
He was smart. He
Yeah.
was smart. He knew how far to go with Dave. He knew what his role was. He was a guy with a deli. I mean, what you don't expect him to be doing handstands.
Right.
Yeah, but the guys. I'm so sorry with I can't remember. But the two fellas at the end of the street who had
Mujabar and
Yeah,
Sergil.
yeah. I thought I couldn't get over the fact that they ended up fly fishing in Montana.
Right.
That we had one of us. We sent them out to Montana, and they were fly fishing. These guys who never saw water before. So we were able to do things like that with them, and it was great.
And then you also some notable guests that people still are talking about.
Yeah.
Madonna. Could you talk about her appearance on the show?
Yeah, well, Madonna had been on the morning show, not the morning show, but the earlier show, and she was good. She would come on and never understand that she was just a guest. She would take the show over, but the one at the theater, I think was that one. It was two different occasions. Oh, the one at the theater was she came on and used the F word.
Yes.
Continuously, and it got boring after a while. And remember, I talked before about about how the crew can really make a difference in the show.
Yeah.
And then camera 3 was getting shot. I always had camera 3 looking around for things to do, and there was an elderly couple looking shocked and cringing from this, and the audience saw that and it just went crazy, and then Dave could say goodbye to Madonna. But she was good. She knew what she was doing.
How about Drew Barrymore, too? Obviously, the birth.
Oh, that was a great moment. She drove up and kind of flashed Dave with her sweater. Yeah.
But there was also this...
She's a wonderful actress, by the
Right.
way.
And then you had several celebrities coming on quite a bit. Regis Philbin loved to be on the show, and I think Dave liked him, too.
Yeah, the thing about Regis Philbin was he was eternally available. If he says, "Oh, so-and-so just started call Philbin," and he would come in and he would do his same thing. He would come running down the aisle like throwing popcorn into the audience, and then run away again, and then Dave would dismiss him. I mean, it was just it was wonderful that he was so available. And I had working with him on the old Joey Bishop show. We were friends, and I was there when he got fired, and he cried on my shoulders, and he was. But he was fun. He was fun to be with.
And animals always seem to work well in late
Yeah.
night, and you had Jack Hanna. What was it like to do those Jack Hanna sequences?
After a while, boring. I had enough Jack Hanna. Every show I ever worked on, Jack Hanna would appear with a reptile or so, and then the reptile would escape, and then we'd all, "Oh my God, what's happening?" And then he would leave. But it was good. It was a reliable 6 minutes. That was it, Jack Hanna.
And then there was also the sweetness with Dave's mom.
Oh, she was lovely. Yeah.
Did you know her before? Had you met her during the late
Dave.
night years?
Dave was very kind to me. He took me out to the Indianapolis 500, the beginning of it, and of course Dave was into cars in a big way, and he knew the racing car drivers. And we went before the race. We were walking around talking to the guys about to drive the 500, and then we got into the stands, and this screaming start. It was thrilling. So the reason I'm saying that is that then we would go, and I spent the night in Indianapolis, and then we had supper at Dave's house, and his mother did the cooking. And she was a terrific woman. She was a quintessential mother. And I worked with her. Then Dave asked me after I retired, when we did Olympics, I was always asked to go out and work with Dave's mom.
Did you always enjoy working with her?
Yeah, she was always, she was, you know, as I said, the quintessential mom. She was, you didn't joke with her, you didn't, you know, you just, yeah.
Okay.
We okay?
Yes.
How's my hair?
Wunderbar.
Yeah, in fact, I missed one great opportunity because I would be with Mom out in Salt Lake City, and we got along very well, and I couldn't get myself to do it. I wanted her to sit on my lap and then wave to Dave, so it would be, but I don't know how Dave would take that. The one thing, how far can you go? Yeah, yeah.
But during that time in the early 90s, you received several Emmys. Could you talk about the joy of receiving that? Did that mean much?
Well, yeah, the first one was for directing. The other one for getting my name on the credits as a producer. that's why you become producer.
Yeah.
But the first one was yeah, it took a while, but I would get more votes than anybody else because the people in the in the union liked me. Yeah, it was good. It was sad because my wife had died. Just, I don't mean to get dreary, but my wife died a couple of years before, and she would, every time I was out there for the Emmys, maybe 5 or 6 times, and she was with me, and I always felt bad for Joan because I didn't get the Emmy, and she was rooting for me. So, and she wasn't there for that. So, it was good and a little sad at the same time.
Then in 1995, you decided to leave The Late
Yeah.
Show. Could you talk about that decision?
Could I just go back to when I did get the Emmy? I thought, you know, I can brag about myself once in a while, so I'll say this. I just, the guy who worked with me for 45 years, Pete Fadovich, when I got up to, you had to make an acceptance speech, and the woman before me had mentioned everybody who had ever worked for her, including people, kitchen help, and so it was name after name after name. So I said, I'd like to give the name of the people I worked with, but so-and-so just mentioned them, before, so I got a laugh there. And then I mentioned the fact that Pete Fadovich had been working with me for 45 years, and I said, I'm really sick of them, and that got a big laugh. So I was happy with these stupid, and I didn't thank everybody, but I did thank Jack Parr. Thank Jack Parr for making my life.
So did you have any input on who would succeed you, or did you assume it would be Jerry Fowler?
No, I was, I tried to get Pete to do it, but they thought Pete was too old. He was like 40 years younger than me, but, and then I suggested Jerry. I asked Jerry, "You want to direct this show?" And he said, "Sure." So I went to Dave and I mentioned Jerry, because Jerry knew the show better than anybody else.
Do you have any memories of your final show, directing on Late Show?
No, the only thing I remember, you always remember the good things said about you. And then Dave was very nice. He gave us kind of long, Hal's leaving, blah, 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 blah. And then he then showed a thing that's on the door of the control room or down the hallway, a thing that CBS, actually it wasn't our show, CBS did it, dedicating the renewal of the theater to me. So there is this bronze plaque with my name on it. So I that's all I heard. I didn't hear anything else. Yeah.
Now, did you plan to retire for good, or
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
pretty much.
How many retirements did you have over the years?
I think up to 4, maybe 5. Yeah.
But there were several shows you came back to work on the pilot.
Yeah, well, every once in a while, like a writer would be working on a show, and they would say, "Why don't you have Al come in?" Right. So I did the first Chris Rock show.
Steve O'Donnell worked on that show, and
I guess Steve was. A couple of people.
Yeah.
And I love working with Chris. He was really fun to be with, and at first he was a little nervous because he hadn't done his own show, and the people at HBO, I thought were writing him too hard. We had meetings where they would go over and over, and in front of everybody, trying to tell him how to perform on the show, and I could see he was uncomfortable. And then they they didn't ask me to leave, but there was one point where the producer, the HBO producer of all their variety shows, said we're going to do 5 shows, but they won't be aired. And I just couldn't help myself. I said, well, they don't have to be any good then. And Chris Rock lit up when he heard that. That made it for him. He said, really, we don't have to be that good. Yeah.
Then you also assisted on The Man Show, too.
The Man Show. Jimmy Kimmel is a great fan of Dave's.
Dave, yeah.
And to see if Al Gurnee is available. And I went out and we did The Man Show. Trampoline was my idea. I'll take credit for that.
Right.
But it was really wonderfully stupid shows. So it was so insulting to women that it went past insulting. It was like, like they weren't being insulted.
Did you have a feeling in working with Jimmy Kimmel that he had a potential to become a late night host too?
Oh yeah. Because he's very smart. And before the show, you go by his little office, and there he is typing away. He's typing the monologue. He's typing all these things. He's maybe the smartest. No, there are a lot of smart people in the business. He's very smart.
Now,
nice. He's a nice guy too.
Right. Now, for Letterman, as his show was coming to an end, did you watch his final show? Did you watch Dave as he ended his tenure as?
I think I did. Probably I did. Yeah. And I went to. There was a farewell party.
Mm-hmm.
I went to one of them. I went to the one that was at the Museum of Modern Art. And
did you stay in touch with Dave over the time?
we talk every once in a while, but not very often. I think I've gone. My life has changed. His life has changed. We're not making something together. I think it's like, even if I was working with a carpenter and we stopped making a house, I wouldn't be in touch with him.
Right. So you didn't talk about the Netflix show that he would.
No.
Yeah. So in summing up, what would you say is Dave's legacy to television? You're working with Dave. What would you say that legacy is from the continuum from late night to late show?
I think that Dave, being the unique person he is, I think it's nice every once in a while for people to come along that are unlike everybody else. And what happens after they're unlike everybody else wants to be like them. And so a lot of, I think Johnny Carson would have been Johnny Carson if it wasn't for Jack Parr. And probably Jack wouldn't have been, although he couldn't stand Steve Allen, I'm sure there's a little bit of Steve Allen in Jack Parr, and go on. And now we're up to, I don't know, I don't watch, as I've said before, I don't really enjoy watching talk shows, but I think it hasn't changed.
So you see, obviously a bit of Letterman and Colbert, Fallon, and Kimmel.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, NBC after Johnny, towards the end of Johnny Carson stuff, he was doing stuff that we were doing. He was doing little outside stuff, and he was doing little jokes and practical stuff. But I think to go back to the very beginning. Broadway After Dark, and the comedian is
Jerry Lester.
Jerry Lester.
Yeah.
I saw the beginning of the Tonight Shows right there. It was Jerry Lester, and I remember this joke very well. It was Dagmar, and that she was a big deal because she was a big busted woman, but he had a routine where he did physical comedy, and the one I remember best was that behind a closed door, you come to a closed door, and behind the closed door is someone yelling out loud, "Watch out, steamroller, watch out, steamroller." And then there's a pause, and under the door is a photograph of a man stretched out, slid under the door. And I said, boy, that's great, I like to do that. So there we are.
Right. You want to mention the DGA and the importance of the Directors Guild in your career.
Yeah, when I started working at Dumont, there was no DGA at Dumont, and I was getting $22 a week. That was my salary, and then one day I was getting $23.75 a week, and I called my boss and I said, "I'm glad to see that you appreciate what I'm doing. I mean, thanks for the raise. And he said, what are you talking about? I said, they just raised the minimum wage. That was it. We were getting minimum wage. And then a year later, we were getting $95 a week. That's why I love the Directors Guild, as well as also getting residuals and all that. They're really good for us.
So now we have what is called the summing up part.
All right.
So these
you,
are more
you do the summing up, all right.
You know, I'll give you the summing up questions.
Yeah.
What did you like about directing and your career in many decades on television?
I got to admit it, I liked the money. I also liked the amount of free time I had. When I was doing the Letterman show, I was getting 13 weeks off a year, paid. I was paid not to work. Now that's hard to resist. I also, over the years, I made some friends that are still with me. I mean, they're not with me. Most of them are dead now, but they were good friends. And every show there would be one or two people that you would stay in touch with, and I had that.
Do you want to mention a few of them, just to get it on tape?
Well, Peter Fatovich was a good example. Jack Parr became like my uncle over the years until he died, and then his daughter,
Right, Randy.
Yeah, Randy was a good friend, and she died tragically just not too long ago, and now I'm in touch with Jack's grandson, and so it goes on and on. So that, yeah, I try to maybe pretend to be unfeeling, but I do have feelings.
Now, we haven't. Were there any mentors that you had that you would say that really helped you throughout your career, or continued to?
Well, the great one, of course, was Jack, and also Gary Moore was a mentor because he wanted to be Jack Parr in the show, and he treated me very nicely. And then when I got fired for punching somebody, he was very, very kind.
Right.
He wanted to send me off on a vacation paper, and no, you don't have to do that. So we maintained our friendship, and he was very nice.
So what would be the most important advice you would have for anyone who is thinking about directing for television?
I think I touched on it before. Yeah. Let the crew help you. Don't compete with the crew. Let the crew help you. And that's been, I'm one of the proudest mementos I have is the Tonight Show. When I left the Tonight Show to do the Jack Parr program, the crew gave me a silver cigarette case with my name and the Tonight Show on it. And that to me, that meant more to me than all the other gifts I've gotten in my lifetime. That meant that they liked me. They liked me because they liked working with me, and they understood that I was willing to share whatever credit I got with other people.
And what advice would you give to anyone aspiring to be a director today? Is there any?
Well, if it's a man, I say look for a very rich father-in-law. No, I'm seriously. I think be willing to start at the bottom and keep. Don't be afraid to shoot your mouth off. Don't be afraid to make suggestions. Don't be afraid to let people know that you want to make things better, and let them know that you want authority, or that's a bad word, not authority. You want to be considered part of the team.
Now, the Television Academy has been doing interviews like this for over 20 years.
Yeah.
How important are the stories that you hear from, esteemed, directors, writers like yourself are important to another generation?
I know there is a website for them.
Yeah.
And I've watched one, and it was the Hal Gurnee one. I haven't watched the other. I mean, I got to say, I'm interested in the products that directors make, but I don't know, maybe except for the guy who, I'm trying to think of what, the German one. It'll come to me later on when I wake up, yeah.
So now, do you watch much television today? You talked a little bit about it. You don't watch talk shows, but what sort
No,
of?
I watch the Patriots, and I'm not a big sports fan, but I love the fact that the Patriots are the most hated team in the country, and
Right.
I love the fact that I'm a supporter. No, I watch movies. I turn a movie. I check Turner movie classics every night to make sure. And sometimes I was watching something the other night. I just seen it a few weeks before. I watched the end of it, and it was it was the Singing in the Rain, the best
Right.
musical ever made.
Mm.
And I just had to see the end of it again. I get 4 Netflix discs a month. I watch those, and I get the screeners, of course, from Hollywood.
So you're still voting on the Emmy Awards?
Yeah. And the thing is, I'm just shocked at how few films I really like coming in those screeners. It's just, you get the screeners, I'm sure, don't you?
Yeah, I view them, yes. So now, have you watched Dave's Netflix show? Do you have any? What are your feelings about that?
I did, and now this is because I liked it very much. Let me put it that way. I thought he was good. I thought, and we talked about this before. The people say, "Did you see Dave in that beard?" And my feeling is, good for you, Dave. This is your way of saying I'm fed up with David Letterman. This is a new person. I think by using the beard, he wants to go on to a new life, and I think that beard's going to help that.
Do you think he will do another series for television, or do you think it'll just be a series of specials and appearances?
I don't think he'll take on a series, but I think
Right.
he'll do what he's doing now.
Mm.
He interviews every once in a while, and
Mhm.
I would hope he would do some travel things and ask me to help him.
So here are a few more reflective questions. What would you say is your biggest career achievement?
I got to say the Ed Sullivan Theater. I think that Ed Sullivan Theater is going to be good for years and years and years, long after we're all gone. I mean, I think it's a great New York City landmark.
And do you think it'll be for talk shows too? Do you think that, although you don't watch them, you help define them? Do you think
I think there'll be some new form of show business that we don't know about now that'll be performed on that stage.
Now, do you have any career regrets at all? Any decisions that you've had good luck, but was there one, chance that you had that you just didn't take?
That's a hard one because I'm so full of myself. I think everything I do is great. So I can't. I'm very happy that I fell into the business I've fallen into because it's provided money. It's made me free, enabled me to travel, and I have not. It's funny. You think after all these years, I would have some regrets. I don't.
Now, when you watch TCM, do you say, "I wish I would have directed one film now," or is that something that you never aspired to?
No, I've thought about this often. I never wanted to be a film director because I remember reading somewhere someone said that directing a film or creating a film is like taking a block of steel and making steel wool. It's just too. I mean, Monday we're going to be on the desert doing that desert scene, and then 2 weeks from now we have to be in South America where we're going to do the stampede of the lions, and so it seems to me that by the time you get finished, you're so sick of that thing, unless you're so dedicated that you can't think of anything else. I think it's really it's hard for me to imagine myself wanting to go through all those stages.
Do you have a metaphor for directing on television, especially the type of directing you did on talk shows? What is it like?
I think the thing is that everything I learned early on as a director in live television, and so I think it's good to start that way because then nothing I don't really get worried about doing a show. And when I did shows, I didn't worry about screwing up because we were still on the air. And that was a great feel. This whole feeling of dead air. I mean, it's hard for people who aren't doing what I do to understand what that means. Or if you're a performer, dead air for a performer like Dave is just, what's going to happen? What are you doing? You know, it's just, we got to move on. You know, a lot of people are watching us. Yeah, so.
And final question, how would you like to be remembered?
I like to remember this, a nice guy who was always humorous, you know, made people laugh. And it's not that something I work at. I can't help myself. I can't, if I am in a situation, I can't help but say something stupid that's going to cheer people up and make people laugh. And you can do that with everybody except your own family. Don't, yeah, it's funny how your family, if someone said the fellow who, if you're English, noble, helps you with your jacket on, he's the last person to laugh at your jokes. Yeah. No, I gotta say, you know, as I said before, I'm almost 47, so so it's been good so far.
So Hal, on behalf of the Television Academy, thank you for sitting down with us today.
Oh, thank you. Hey, what nice people. Okay.